how are you advising your clients on these Chinese export controls? Are you just telling them to wait it out till the two leaders meet in South Korea and maybe there is a deal on the table? Or are you thinking more long term that, look, this decoupling is here to stay and maybe it makes sense to diversify your procurement of, rare earth from other sources or like other countries as well?
So, in the short term, yes, we have to wait out to see what is going to happen. We're all looking forward to the meeting. But from what we see, these export controls are not going to go anytime soon. They're here to stay. And this is not across this is not just for rare earths, this is across all critical minerals. Because critical minerals are not just enablers of modern technology anymore. They're strategic tools, they're strategic leverage now. And these are tools for negotiation for any geopolitical turmoil. And for the long term, for the medium term, long term, yes, the best way to de risk yourself from such a situation is to either build your own supply chain, build your own ecosystem. Or if that is not possible, then diversify your sources as much as possible. The problem is now that the entire world is structurally dependent on China. And if China decides to stop material from coming out and they get to decide who gets what, then I mean everyone is basically just waiting for China to decide how their armies are going to work or how their technology development is going to work. Everyone's everyone's future growth is controlled from this one geopolitically concentrated supply chain. So, and this is not the first time this has happened. This, just for rare earths, for an example, this happened back in 2010. There was a there was a there was a tension between China and Japan that happened, and China decided to stop exporting rare earths. In fact, even when they did start resuming their production, what happened is that they oversupplied the market so much that no other producer outside of China was able to break into the market because the market was so oversupplied, demand was not as strong as supply was, prices crashed. And any producer outside of China would need a certain threshold to break even into the market. And because China was producing at a very low cost and at very low prices, everyone just depended on China and just got their material from China. But this is not about just getting cheap material anymore. If you want a secure supply chain, if you want to make sure that these export controls do not affect you, diversify your sources as much as possible. Make sure, but also focus on building your own upstream, midstream, and downstream capacity.
Right. So the Japan example is quite interesting, right? Because we have a real life case study on how this essentially played out back in 2010. Why didn't like governments and the private sector, take that as, at that time like an area of concern that, look, we are extremely concentrated on this one country of supplying us with, critical minerals, rare earths, both heavy and light, and start diversifying at that from 2010 onwards. Like, why is it that, we had to wait till 2025 and seeing alarm bells being raised again?
That is because, I mean, yes, you see on the surface that yes, there's a lot of alarm bells being rung now, but we are far from actually making it happen anytime soon. These alarm bells have happened, but it's already too late. Like I mentioned, we are days away, if not weeks, from a crisis. And in 2010, when these happened, yes, there was a lot of noise around this, and a lot of developing producers came into the market. China's export restriction was challenged in the World Trade Organization, and they had to start producing. They had to resume their exports, and because they China is able to produce and grow their production at very low cost, and they have and they do not have that added burden of a capital return because they get all their funding from the state. It was very easy for them to grow, and for anyone who needed any material, they always got cheap material. They got access to cheap material. They've they've basically made everyone dependable on them. In fact, I'll give you an example. Rare earths was first actually it started production in the US in the 1980s. US was the major rare earths producer. But what happened? What happened is that there were such stringent environmental policies and not so supportive industrial policies that ultimately those companies either were shut down because of very strict licenses, or lack of funding support, or they went bankrupt. Versus China had very flexible environmental policies. They were like, and rare earths mining or any critical mining essentially is a very dirty process.
Hmm.
It harms the environment a lot. So China gave that cushion that, okay, we are going to do the dirty work for you. You can come to us for the material. And now China has managed to grow that since 1980s till now. And cut to chase, now everyone is just heavily dependent on China.